Welcome back to Interjections. Another week with two consecutive Inter victories. We haven't dropped points in 2024. It's been a great year so far. I'm your host, Andrew. We've got Miko, Irfan, and Sterling in today for Jay. We're going to skip the introductions because we have a packed agenda and we need to get right into things. We're going to start with the Lecce match. We'll get to the Atletico match later in the episode, but we want to start with the 4-0 win over Lecce today. We heavily rotated in this match, and Inzaghi chose to basically roll out all the substitutes for the most part with Lautaro up top, and it looked like it in the first half. We were absorbing pressure, we were playing out on the counter, and we scored a goal that was a little bit against the run of play. Then in the second half, Lecce came out dangerous. They had a diving header attempt that very easily could have been a goal. And then seemingly out of nowhere, we put the game away. We scored 2 goals in quick succession, and then we managed to get a fourth later on, polish this thing off. Miko, let's start with you. Just what were your thoughts on this match where it feels like maybe we got away with something and that we were able to get so many key players a rest while also just dominating Lecce towards the end of the game?
Yeah, absolutely. That was my main take of this match, that it was a heavy rotation, and the first half it wasn't easy at all. It felt like it was a bit like a Salernitana away match in autumn when we struggled quite a bit. It felt a bit same. It was a hostile grind for sure, like we talked earlier, and I felt maybe some of the players were a bit nervous. I don't know. Our build-up play, it wasn't great. We couldn't keep the ball too well or make our typical ball cycling and connecting with the passes. But it was a bit cagey. But then Aslani found Lautaro and he managed to pull the goal. I liked the goal. It was a great pass by Aslani. Okay, not super great, but pretty fancy with his outside of this foot, but it went a bit too close to Lautaro's feet, but then Lautaro managed to pull the chance there and managed to keep the defender on his backside. That was a well executed goal by Lautaro in my books. What else? Yeah, for the first half, I want to repeat that it wasn't easy, and it was a bit of a struggle. But then we just play like typical champions, that you get the result even if it's not easy always.
I just want to get Irfan's thoughts on Aslani's assist because I know you're going to have some gushing to get out of the way.
Yeah. Well, Miko said it best. I mean, I think it was a good. It was a great pass. It was a good look. The execution, like Miko said, it was good but not great. But the look was awesome. And it was much needed, right? Because like you both already said, the first half was a little cagey. It took us a while to kind of get our rhythm, start playing our game. The heavy rotation, it's not surprising that it took us a while. But given where we were in the match, I think it was a very important play by Aslani, and I give him a lot of credit for it. But more credit honestly does go to Lautaro because he still had a lot to do. He had to kind of, use his strength to keep the defender off and put forth a really good kind of accurate shot. And he did all of that. So it was good to see him look sharp throughout the match because, he hasn't looked so sharp the last couple of matches for, whatever reason. So it was good to get him. He got his 100th goal and then his 101st later. So while I do give credit to Aslani, I think he did a good job filling in for Hakan because it's always a gamble whenever Hakan's not playing. So Aslani does deserve some credit. I think overall the goal was good. Lautaro deserves a lot of credit, and it came at a really good time because I think if we had gone into this match at halftime 0-0, it could have been a little bit different coming out of halftime. But I think scoring that first goal made a big difference in the way we played and the way Lecce was forced to play. And then we kind of just piled on at the end after that. So overall, good result. I think the team just played really well overall. And Aslani was certainly part of that, though I'm not going to gush too much with praise. But it was good to see him, get a contribution.
I've always said that Aslani kid is a world-class talent, and I'm so glad that we loaned Aguome to get that guy out of the way and make sure that we gave Aslani more minutes. No, obviously I'm joking. I've never been the biggest Aslani fan or supporter, but you got to give credit where it's due. I thought that he played a really good game today. Obviously, the through ball to Lautaro uh, was in a key moment, as was mentioned previously. Lautaro did really well with that finish. I thought that Aslani was probably a little bit hard done to have gotten that yellow card as well, which we all knew would result in him not finishing the match. But I thought that that was not a yellow card challenge there, and I really wanted to highlight something that he did in the build up to, I believe it was the third goal or the second Lautaro goal, where Bisek put Audero under a lot of pressure with kind of a poor pass when Audero was under pressure. Audero didn't manage to get the ball to Aslani, who was also under pressure, and he just played a quick one-touch ball back into Bisek who was at that point already galloping forward. And that pretty much broke the entire game open. That's what you want from a player in that position, to be able to receive a ball when they're facing their own goal and just know immediately where to play a one-touch pass while there's a defender at their back and they're under pressure. I thought that was a really mature decision by him, and I think it opened up the game and obviously led to Bisek being able to gallop forward, and eventually it led to I think that was a Frattesi goal. Actually, is the one that it led to, the Frattesi goal. But overall, just a good decision by him deep in our half that really kind of opened up the game for us. I was really happy to see that. I thought that showed some really good growth. I think, yeah, this game was really interesting because we did make 7 changes. I mean, our entire back line, including the goalkeeper, is essentially what you would consider to be our backups. If everyone's fit and it's a big match, none of those guys are playing in those positions. So this is a really big test. I mean, it's not easy to rotate 7 players and then go on the road. I don't really care who you're playing. And Lecce made it difficult.
We were having some trouble in the build-up play, especially in that first half there. I think we really missed Hakan and Barella. And I thought that overall our approach was just probably a little bit on the casual side. I didn't like some of the passing out of the back. I especially thought that Bisek did not look good passing out of the back today for whatever reason. Overall, I do have some opinions on his game. I wasn't necessarily that impressed today. This was probably the least impressive performance I've seen from Bisek thus far. And I'm obviously going to give him some benefit of the doubt because I think he looked a little bit rusty. I think at times he did look a little bit nervous. But the main thing I noticed from him today that I didn't notice in prior games was he had a lack of willingness to try a risky pass today. He didn't really try and play forward. He kept on passing the ball back to Audero when he was in situations where he probably didn't want to receive the ball. And it did lead to some sketchy situations, to say the least. But also with Bisek, one thing I noticed about his game is that at times he can be a little bit static, especially when the ball is in the air. He does tend to kind of lose flight of the ball and also maybe lose the attacker sometime when the ball is in the air. And overall, just doesn't really play tight enough to the striker for my liking. But listen, he's a young guy. He's still, I think, 22 years old, if I'm not mistaken. And part of this is also on Inzaghi because when he was playing well, Inzaghi just decided to bench him for 5 or 6 matches in a row. So it's tough to come back in after having been out for such a long time. But yeah, we definitely had some struggles today in the build-up play. But overall, once we got the first goal, I think that really kind of made the game a lot simpler. Second half started out, again, we were kind of under pressure, but as soon as we got the second goal, this really kind of ceased to be a real game at that point. I think Lecce's head has kind of dropped, and it was always going to be an Inter victory at that point.
I don't think the defense played particularly well today. Audero gets a lot of heat from fans, and I think he's better than a lot of people give him credit for, but it's tough coming in when you haven't been in a game action in 3 months and stepping in as a goalkeeper. But between Bisek and Augusto on the left, we were leaking chances. Like I said in my opening spiel, Lecce really were taking the match to us for the first little bit. And if you look at X goals for the game, They actually had about 0.9x goals. Like there were chances to be had from them. And when you're playing three defenders together who maybe aren't used to playing together, who, in Bisek's case and Aldero's case, haven't started in several, a month now at least, I think it just maybe led to some of the lack of rhythm coming out of the back, like you were talking about, Sterling. What to me was the headline stealer today was the attack. I thought Sanchez had his best game of the season by far today. He was making great passes. He obviously set up Frattesi on the one goal, but it's not often that his link-up play works as well as it did. And the problem with Sanchez, of course, is that he overplays the ball frequently. There will be a simpler outlet pass where you could lay it off or, pass it to the midfield. But I do appreciate the initiative. He takes chances, much like Aslani's first pass. Aslani's first pass, he could have made a safer pass laterally, a safer pass backwards. But instead he went for the more aggressive forward through ball. And it wasn't a perfect pass, but it made the defense intervene. And they didn't succeed in intervening. As a result, we got a goal out of it. And that's kind of the way Sanchez played today, where, he was wasteful at times, but he frequently was making Lecce defenders make decisions. And he pretty much was involved in 2 of our 4 goals today. So I was very happy with the attack. Don't know if you guys agree, but coupled with Lautaro kind of getting out of his mini skid.
Yeah, I thought he looked really good physically today, which has probably been my biggest complaint from his prior cameos, is that he's just looked really weak on the ball. And obviously, he was gifted with pace when he was younger. Obviously, when he was at Udinese, Barcelona, Arsenal, his pace got him out of a lot of situations. And it seemed like for a long time, his game just hasn't really adjusted to the fact that he doesn't have rapid pace anymore. And sometimes he still kind of gets himself into those situations. He'll still kind of dribble into trouble at times. But I thought he looked much better physically today. I think that both of our older strikers have looked much better physically in the last month or so. Maybe they're just finally starting to hit some form. Obviously, Arnautovic has also struggled with some injuries. And I think that probably is partially why he had some tough times with his form physically earlier in the season. But I thought Sanchez looked really good today. He does always try that killer pass, which, it's a double-edged sword. Sometimes it's going to work out great, and sometimes it's not going to work out great. And when it works out great, you're like, wow, you're a genius. And when it doesn't, you're like, why didn't you just take the easy pass? So you kind of got to live and die by Sanchez because he will be lax in possession at time. But overall, definitely one of his better performances.
I'm a bit surprised about the Sanchez comments, since my first reaction, especially from the first half, was that he's doing terribly with the ball. Like, okay, I get it that he was involved in the game, and that's, of course, like completely crucial in his game, that he is inside the game and he's not hovering around, and that's what he did. But man, those passes, he had so many missed passes at least in the first half, that I was like, what are you doing? But then in the second half, he got better, and of course got the key assist to in the Frattesi goal, which was it was the second goal, so it was kind of this decisive goal, and yeah. But I like Sanchez as he's such an active player, and even though I gotta say I think his acceleration isn't at its best anymore, because when he gets the ball in a static situation, when he's trapping the ball and then start moving, sometimes he's just too slow there, and he can't like break away from the physical contact, and then he loses the ball, and that's pretty dangerous in his game, because usually that's a counter attack immediately. But that didn't happen today. I don't know, did it happen maybe once? But overall, it was a good game, although the missed passes was in my books that they were like there were too many of them in the first half. But that's just the way he plays, so we gotta give it to him.
Yeah, I'm kind of in the same boat. I felt like he started off a little slow, but I did feel like by the end of the match that this was one of his better, or if not best, performances to date, because he was involved a lot. And you could tell, like, right, like you see these players and you can tell immediately some of them have very good, like, technical ability. So, some of them have like some ambition. Some of them have, they're a little more rigid, but they execute really well in what they're supposed to do. But with Sanchez, you can tell that like he's such a creative player, right? Like the way he views the pitch, the way he views the defense, the way he views the field, you could just tell like the creativity is just like everywhere for him. And sometimes the execution isn't there. And oftentimes, like, I think he expects the players of the quality that he used to play with, at like Barcelona or something, getting in those positions where he's like launching a pass. Sometimes it happens and it works out amazing. And a lot of times there's nobody there or the execution's off. So it is a mixed bag with him. But this match, I felt like he was zoned in a really good way. And I do feel kind of like what Sterling was saying, that like physically he just seemed a lot more sharper. Like he seemed like a player who was confident and was healthy and just seemed to get a lot more involved and had some key contributions again. And I think with Arnautovic and with Sanchez, right? Like I feel like Inter fans rightfully are frustrated by, the lack of depth after Lautaro and Thuram. But I think what you look for on any team when you have backup strikers is like, are they contributing in some way or another? Like you don't expect the same level of crispness or efficiency or, goal scoring threat that you would from your starters, but you expect them to be involved and you expect them to have some key contributions. And to be honest, like I think Arnautovic so far has had a lot of key contributions through assists and through some goals. Sanchez, not as much, but today I think Sanchez did a good job. And so, if he can continue to do this during the time that Thuram is injured, then, I think we'll be in really good shape going forward.
One thing he's done pretty well recently is he has made the pass before the assist. There's been, I think, there was a couple of matches in a row. I think it was like 3 matches in a row where he came on and he made what some people would call a hockey assist, where essentially he's the last pass before the assist is made. So he has started to kind of show signs that maybe he's starting to turn the corner there in terms of form. And look, when you're, I think Irfan hit it right on the head. When you're talking about your backup strikers, really what you want is just for them to come on and be able to contribute in key times of the season in key areas. Today was a perfect example of that. We're playing Lecce, right? We're not playing a top half team. Lecce is closer to relegation than they are the team ahead of them last time I checked. So this is when a guy like Sanchez can come in, get minutes, and when he can still impact the game. And that's really what you want from your backup striker. I thought that both him and also Arnautovic, when he came on today, had a strong performance as well. And that allows you to take Lautaro off a little bit earlier and save him for Atalanta. So no complaints from the contribution from either backup striker today.
Yeah, and when these guys play more, they will be better, because Sanchez has played so little amount of minutes that it was good that he was able to play full match today. So like he's gonna get that feeling that, okay, I'm contributing, I'm in the game, and like he's getting the minutes in his legs. And same for Arnautovic, of course, and he's been playing more recently. Today a bit less, because he is going to start against Atalanta on Wednesday, most probably. So it's good that these guys can contribute in some way, like you guys said. And I feel like they will be better when they get these minutes. So in the long run, it's only good for the whole team.
What did you guys think about the performance from Frattesi today?
I wasn't a huge fan of his performance early in the match, and maybe this is a recurring trend of no one particularly played well until we snatched that goal out of nowhere. But the problem with Frattesi is that he is not a very technically sound player. Like, he is not... Well, I'll use Asllani as a counterpoint. Like, Asllani, for what it's worth, has the ability to pull out a great pass, whereas Frattesi, of course, is more of a forward runner. And Frattesi is kind of like watching Bambi in skates at time, where he's get the ball, he's running straight at the defense. I don't really know what the plan is, other than he's putting his head down and he's attacking. And it didn't come off a few times in the first half. There was one chance where it was basically one-on-one with the defense, and he basically ended up giving it up for a goal kick. So I wasn't a huge fan of his performance. Maybe he salvaged it a bit with the goal, and I think there was another late involvement he had in the second half where he was
for Lautaro.
Yeah. So I don't know. It's been a bit of an underwhelming season from Frattesi. Like I understand he's not played a ton of minutes. He probably would be getting more minutes if he played on any other team in the league. But I do want to emphasize that this is the most expensive Serie transfer of the summer. So there should be expectations with him. And I do wonder, like, how is this guy going to carve out a role in this team moving forward, assuming we don't sell Barella? And I struggle to see, like, a super great path forward. The one suggestion I've seen floated out there that I would actually be interested in trying once we, are comfortable in matches is letting Frattesi play kind of as like a supporting striker, since Thuram's out hurt.
I think Frattesi's problem is he's not like Barella, and he's usually not playing with Barella. I think that's the biggest issue, because when we play with Barella, he's the motor, like an engine of this team, and when he's there, he's not there, and Frattesi is there. There's like a lack of playmaking for us when Frattesi is there. Like you said, he's
so do you
more of a
think
runner.
Frattesi looked good today because he was on, like, in the second half, because him and Barella were on the same pitch, were on the pitch at the same time when Seslani went off with the yellow card?
Well, yeah. Well, in the second goal, he did what he does best. He stormed to the goal and there was it. And then the third goal as well. It was a nice assist there. But yeah, Barella played in a bit different role than usually. But I think it maybe eased a bit when Barella came in. Although it was it right after the second goal. So of course the result was a bit different than maybe Lecce. Well, they I don't know. Probably they didn't like felt that okay, this is over, but it felt a bit that okay, we were maybe not gonna win this. Like they put a good show there, but then it's 2-0. So maybe there was okay, whatever. So it's not totally comparable in this case when you bring in Barella at that point of the game. But still, Frattesi usually doesn't play with Barella.
Yeah, I thought that was interesting. To me, the most intriguing part of the match, other than the late cameos, which I'm sure we'll get into, was the fact that Inzaghi played Frattesi and Barella together, because that was intriguing to me. Once he pulled Asllani, the midfield was different, and I think Barella does a lot of work that sometimes people don't notice. What I find interesting about Frattesi mainly is that the guy clearly has a knack for scoring goals, getting in good positions, and like contributing to the attacking play. But I think his challenge is going to be in the system that Inzaghi runs. The three midfielders, and I'm including Mkhitaryan in this because I've noticed this more and more with Mkhitaryan, they do so much dirty work in the midfield, right? Like they scramble and they track back and they press and they play a defensive role a lot in the midfield. Like none of the three midfielders usually has the luxury to kind of, have space and just drop balls in and make runs into the box. Like everyone's working extremely hard in the Inzaghi midfield. And Frattesi, I'm not saying he's lazy, but he's not the kind of player with the traits that is designed to like work extremely hard on and off the ball. And he does a good job when he's on, but he really is more of like a spark plug than he is the kind of player who's going to fulfill kind of all of the work that Barella does or all the work that Hakan does, or even like, nowadays, all the work that Mkhitaryan does. I mean, we'll get into this a little bit with the Atletico match, but Mkhitaryan was forced to do a lot of dirty work in that match, and it had its effect on our midfield for sure. But I think that's the problem with Frattesi is that, Inzaghi demands a lot of work from the midfield that sometimes can go kind of unnoticed. And I think we lack some of that with Frattesi, and it makes us a little more imbalanced like we saw in the first half of this match.
And I think
I
Andrew
think that
makes a really good point that, we spent a lot of money on Frattesi when you look at what the Serie A transfers were this last summer. And I really don't see any way that he is going to become a long-term starter in this team without us making a sale, because especially now with Zielinski apparently joining in the summer, and that's most likely going to be him competing with Mkhitaryan for that third midfield spot, because obviously, he's not going to bench Barella, that's for sure. So I struggle to see where we really fit him in as a sure starter in this team anytime soon. I think Frattesi is an interesting player. I do like facets of his game. I think his all-round play isn't beautiful, but you can't say he's not impactful. Obviously, today he had a goal and assist, and if you look at his minutes to goal contribution, it's really strong for a midfielder. He definitely knows how to get into the right positions. He definitely knows how to make the right runs. He's a really good athlete. He's pretty decent defensively. He just doesn't have a lot of technical quality, which is something that you really want from a midfielder. And I think it's something that Inzaghi wants from his midfielders. And that is something that you do notice when he takes one of those three spots, because there's like a break in the chain, if you will. When our midfield is playing at its absolute best, I mean, the fluidity of it and the ability for them to pass and move and interchange is beautiful to watch. And Frattesi's just not that guy. He's going to run in behind. He's going to pop up in the box, in the 6-yard box. He can finish better than probably any of our midfielders, but there is certainly something lacking when it comes to finding passing lanes and receiving the ball under pressure as well. I do think it's interesting that we never play him with Barella. I think it's a little bit strange that we never see Hakan, Barella, and Frattesi as a midfield. I'm sure Inzaghi has his reasons for that. He almost never rests Mkhitaryan, which to a certain extent I kind of understand, because there's nobody else who really brings exactly what Mkhitaryan brings. But at the same time, you would think we would want to see if we could build on a midfield that involves Frattesi from the start more often, and kind of let that gel. But right now, I just don't see a way for him to really stamp his authority in this team and become a long-term starter.
I think Irfan made a great point in Frattesi's defensive game, and that's I agree that that's probably the reason why he isn't playing that much as a starter, because I've kind of noticed also that when Frattesi is on the right side, he doesn't press in the same way as Barella. He seems to be a bit like a 2 meters late. His timing is a bit off when he's pressing, and maybe he just lacks that kind of a mindset what Inzaghi wants from his midfielders, that you need to cover the spaces, different areas on the pitch in certain times. So it feels that Frattesi just doesn't have it in that way, and maybe it takes time for him to have it. We don't know that, but at the moment it looks like his defensive side of his game is just not up to par, and that's why I feel that he's not playing. But you mentioned the price of the player, and yeah, it's not like how do you say it? It's not optimal when you have a over 30 million player and he's basically a bench player. But on the other hand, for the coach, it really doesn't matter how much the players cost him if they are just fits to the squad, and Frattesi fits to Inter in a sense that we don't have to use him as a starter. He can be the impact sub when we need the goal or those forward runs. So I don't see that being such a big issue, that okay, because he's so expensive, so we need to start using him. We probably will change our game if the personnel in the squad changes, and at the moment it doesn't look like our starting midfield is gonna change. So probably we keep playing like we do, but on the at the same time, I think we need to adjust our game a bit so that when we have Frattesi, for example, in place of Mkhitaryan, we maybe need to play a bit differently and not just have this one style of play, no matter who's playing there. Even though the players seem to, at least I've read some comments from the players that no matter who's playing there, we play the same way, and everyone is like good enough to this team and blah blah blah. But in general, at the moment it looks like we keep playing like we play because we have the same personnel, but Frattesi not fitting perfectly to this style at the moment. That's how I feel. And
he's not a flop.
You guys said it.
Yeah, I don't think anyone's saying that he's a flop by any means. At the end of the world, at the end of the day, even if he just becomes a guy who really is a bench spark for us, if he fits to the squad well, he's still very young. He's still going to grow as a player. Even if he's the fourth midfielder for us, even in the future, it's not ideal, obviously, for the money spent, but it's not a catastrophe either. It's like, hey, at least we have another guy that we can rely on, that we know can get the job done. And football is more and more of a squad game every year as they continue to add more and more fixtures. So, having a guy that you can rely on in your squad who is good enough to at least come in and give minutes, and he scores goals. I mean, yeah, we could still do a lot worse. There's no doubt about that.
I want to put a wrap on this Lecce conversation before we transition to Europe by just pointing out a very interesting note from the broadcast today, which is that the best Serie season of all time in the three-point era was Conte at Juventus back in 2013-14. The team recorded 102 points, which was, it was 3 draws and 2 losses. As of now, I believe we have 3 draws and 1 loss this season. So is it probable we win out and set the record? No, but man, we are impressive. And we have the possibility, if the season keeps trending the way it is, to have one of the most impressive Serie A seasons of recent memory. So let's hope we can keep this up.
Really quickly before we switch gears from Lecce, any thoughts on Buchanan's performance from anybody? I thought he looked fairly decent. It wasn't obviously a long time that we got to see him, but looked like he showed some quick feet, had a decent left-footed cross. Any thoughts there?
Yeah, so he played on the left again, so that was interesting for sure. But I think that's, again, more because DiMarco needed to come out, and Inzaghi probably didn't want to use Bastoni at all. So that's probably the reason. And, of course, the game was over, so it's risk-free to put in the guy. But, yeah, I think he made that one challenge, trying to go past the defender. I don't know, was there a foul? They didn't give me any reply, so I didn't see if there was any foul or not. But he just lost the ball there. But at least he tried to be active, and passes were okay and so on. But I don't think he didn't get the ball too much there. He didn't play on the left too much.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think it's what you're saying. I think you can see the talent. You can see he's up for it. He doesn't seem overwhelmed by the moment. He gets on the pitch. He tries to do something. You saw that today. I liked what I saw. Obviously, it was just a little bit of a preview. Hopefully, we'll get to see a little bit more. Also, Akinsanmiro, that was interesting to see him play. I thought he played totally fine. Again, it's Lecce. We're up by a bunch of goals, so I'm not going to get too carried away. But I think he looked the part. He looked fine. So wouldn't mind seeing a few more cameos from him. But going because just kind of extending this, I do think we got to give some credit to Inzaghi, because for the longest time, one of our complaints has been that the guy just does not really rotate. and he's so rigid with his starters, especially in Serie. It took some guts today to roll out the team that he rolled out, and I'm sure we have a nice cushion at the top, so that played into it. But credit where credit's due. I think it showed some guts to come out with the kind of team that he came out with today on the road, even though it's Lecce, and the team performed pretty well. So some kudos to Inzaghi, I think, is also deserved.
I'll do my best Jay impersonation and say, let's start Ebenezer moving forward. Ebenezer needs more game time.
Young Ebenezer. I can't believe that Jay skipped the pod today to watch the Milan game, but he's going to be very happy because they took a very early lead against Atalanta, so things are looking pretty good.
His Leal jersey is probably just covered in all sorts of substances right now. So let's get to talking about the Champions League win against Atletico. I think we did a really good job capping this game on the pod because I think a lot of what we described for you all is how the game played out in terms of this tight affair. Atletico weren't very interested in playing football for a good portion of it. We were invited forward. We had a lot of chances to score, and we couldn't. So it was a collective relief for all of us when we finally got a late goal because it just felt like we deserved one, and we needed one, frankly. We needed something from this match to show that we can take this thing once we head back to Madrid in a few weeks. I think the story of the game, before we get into injuries, was probably Arnautovic. People were fed up with his misses. I think there are two ways to view this. You can look at it as, man, this guy was putting himself in a lot of good chances. Like, he was making good runs. He had a few good balls over the top. But, man, there was one particularly egregious miss where he leaned back from point blank and fired the ball over the net. So I want to get the opinion from an elderly person on our oldest striker. So, Irfan, how do you feel about Arnautovic's performance against Atletico?
Wow. Thanks for teeing it up for me. I think, here's how I feel about Arnautovic. I'm in the camp where I do think that him getting in these positions and getting chances is great. And I'll tell you why I say that, because look, he's never been a super efficient goal scorer. That's not who he is. And now late in his career, he's not going to all of a sudden transform into like a Dzeko or something like that, right? That's not his game. And I think a lot of the criticism from Arnautovic, rightfully so, is just around the price tag that we paid for him. I think if he would have come in as a free transfer or, a sub $5 million transfer, I think people would have been a lot more palatable to some of the inefficiency that we see from him. It's challenging knowing that we paid as much as we did for him. And it was a rather unimaginated, like, kind of, a transfer. Like, it wasn't super well thought out, I think. But ultimately, again, he gets in positions. Now, for every 5 positions he gets in, he scores once, which is obviously, an issue. But it was fine. Like, he did deliver the goal that we needed. And it wasn't necessarily a super easy finish. And he kind of scuffed it, to be honest, even then. Like, I think he had a lot more of the goal open, and he hit it a lot more centrally, and it kind of deflected off Atletico in a way that and still ended up in the goal. So, again, not sharp at all. But going back to what Miko was saying earlier in the pod, I do think that both Sanchez and Arnautovic, given their more elderly statesman stature, probably benefit from additional reps and more playing time. So, whereas right now he might knock in something 1 every 5 times, I think if you played a little bit more, you might see it like once every 3 times or once every 4 times. And again, from a backup striker, I think that's okay. But I think it's very important that he was getting into those positions, because Atletico is not the same defensive kind of juggernaut that they've been in years past, but they're still a very cagey and annoying team to play, especially to score against. So it ended up being a very, very, very important goal. So kudos to him for knocking it in.
Yeah, Arnautovic is just a very seemingly moody player, which is kind of a little bit disappointing given the fact that he is an older, more experienced player. He's 34 years old. He shouldn't be as moody as he is, but you can just tell that he needs to score a golazo. If he scores a really nice goal in a big match, I think we're going to unlock a different player. And I think that he is working towards, playing better and better. And, maybe Atalanta is that moment for him. But he just seems like he needs a big goal to make him feel more comfortable in the Inter shirt, because I think he just feels like the world is against him. And you can see every time he misses a chance, he just looks up at the heavens like, why have you forsaken me? Why is this happening to me of all people? And it's like, man, just get on with it. Strikers miss chances. It is what it is. And again, I thought that he had a really good performance. I thought that he got himself into fantastic positions. We looked better in the second half. I'm not saying that's all necessarily down to his play. Maybe it was also the fact that we kind of put on the pedal a little bit, and that Atletico dropped a little bit deeper. But I thought that he actually had a better second half performance than Lautaro did. And really, my criticism, if I'm going to give criticism to a striker in this match, is really going to be for Lautaro, who's, our captain and our world-class player. We're talking about this guy being a top 5 striker in the world, but I'd be lying if I didn't say his form against the truly top teams is a little bit worrying, especially in the Champions League. I thought that he had 2 really very large chances. Obviously, the first one came in the first half from Thuram, when he got onto a loose ball in the opponent's half and beat Witsel to it, and then played Lautaro in. And Lautaro has to take that chance first time, even if he misses it or if it's right at the goalkeeper. I can live with that, but to take the touch, then get closed down, then have the weak shot, that just showed a little bit of a lack of confidence there. And then obviously there's a chance that leads up to the goal where, I'm okay with him taking that shot. I think obviously he could have passed it to Dumfries. That would have been just fine as well. But, again, kind of a weak shot at the goalie. Luckily, it does come to Arnautovic, and Arnautovic is able to get that monkey off of his back. But 2 big chances there that fall to our informed world-class player, and he kind of fluffed both of them. And then when you start to look at the actual statistics for how he's performed in the Champions League, it's not pretty. It's 12 goals in 42 games, if I'm not mistaken. It's just not what you would expect from somebody who's been banging in goals so regularly in Serie. There's definitely something that's getting lost in translation there. So, obviously, you can only say so much wrong about Lautaro. You can't be too harsh on him, especially with the season he's giving, especially the way he works for the team, his overall play. I mean, he brings so much to the squad overall, but I do want to see more from him when it comes to goals, especially in the Champions League and especially against these big teams in these crunch moments.
I think as for Lautaro, Arnautovic was talked about. I don't have much to add to him. He also got credited by UEFA the Man of the Match award, so he was getting the credit there as well. But as for Lautaro, yeah, the stats, they aren't great. I can't deny them, but I feel like his playing style is kind of it's so taxing that maybe in those type of situations when he should score, maybe the energy levels they affect him. I don't know. He's battling so hard in these matches, and the role he plays, it's like I just feel like because he's not that like a clinical finisher like Icardi or who we had before, Vieri and so on. So it's a bit different type of player, and it feels like we saw against Atletico, maybe he starts to think too much because in those cases. Because after the match he gave an interview and he was asked about that first chance, and I think he said something like that he was about to one-touch it, but then he decided to do otherwise, and he took the second touch, and then the ball was too close to his feet and he couldn't get a proper shot or something like that. And I feel and I hope that he learns from these moments that, okay, maybe you do the one touch next time and try to just score the goal. Maybe he was like, it feels like when he explained that he's like having this kind of pressure because it's it's a really, really, really big match for the team, and maybe that pressure gets to him sometimes. That's how I feel how it goes with him in this. Like we have seen that this type of situations before with him. So maybe it takes something out of his game when the pressure is really high, and he kind of tries too much to be neat or like secure the goal, and then he then he just misses it.
It definitely seems
eventually.
mental, right? I don't think it's definitely not technical quality, because obviously in Serie A, I think he has supreme confidence. But for whatever reason, in Champions League and also in international games for Argentina, something is a little bit off, and he's just mentally struggling to be the same player in those matches that he is, even against the top teams in Serie A. Irfan, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think there's something to that. I definitely think it's mental. I think he's very comfortable playing in Serie A, and I think that's something that's important for him. I think he gets a little uncomfortable when he's playing in Europe, and I would say like part of it is the pressure, because you mentioned the national team as well. But in some big moments, like when it comes to like key penalty kicks and things like that, he's delivered there. So it's not necessarily just a kind of pressure situation, but I think it's a comfort situation, right? Like we're in Serie A, he's extremely comfortable knowing, where all the players are going to be. I think he knows the teams he's playing against really well. I think he knows the defenders he's playing against really well. He could probably pick out, where he can get an advantage against whatever center back he's playing against, right? I think that's there. But then when it comes to European matches, I think, it's a little bit harder for him, I think, mentally to get that comfort level. So what I would like to see from him, kind of like what you both were talking about, is just rely more on your instinct, right? Like I feel like he's the kind of player who, I think there was some stat they were mentioning today that like he scored more like one-touch goals or first-time goals than most strikers score. And so I think he needs to rely on that a little bit more and just have a little bit more confidence in some of these bigger games. What I think is really interesting about Lautaro is, and I'm going to vent a little bit here, Sterling, you mentioned this, and I couldn't agree with you more. People need to stop criticizing like him for every like pass that he doesn't make. Okay, like he didn't pass the ball to Dumfries. Like this isn't FIFA, right? Like the guy's our striker, he's our forward. It's a 0-0 game in Europe. Like if he thinks he can get a shot off, he's gonna take the shot, and he should. So again, like people are just way too like. Everyone wants to make that. Everyone wants him to make that perfect decision. See Dumfries on the back, from the back of his head with two defenders on him, and make that pass. And it's like, guys, like be realistic here, right? Like this is your striker. It's not like he's like a creative player whose job is to create chances for other people, like Hakan, right? If Hakan's in that position and maybe, he makes that pass and he's looking for that pass, but this is a forward, it's your striker. Like he knows the responsibility of scoring goals is on him. So why would he try to pass up an opportunity where he can get a good shot in? I think some of that criticism just gets way, way overblown. Like, again, he's a forward, he's a striker, he scored a lot of goals. Like you don't want him to be second guessing like when he should be shooting and when he shouldn't. So I was glad. I know Sterling, you mentioned it. I know Miko feels the same way. Like it's just some of that criticism of like when a goal scoring forward is like criticized for not passing the ball, which by the way wouldn't have been that easy of a pass to pull off in any event. It's extremely frustrating for me.
I think that last rant was dedicated to Jay, who is sitting at home wondering why we're not criticizing Lautaro more. I do want to get your guys' thoughts on the Thuram injury, though, because I know I was freaking out about this when he came off at the half. Arnautovic replaces him. Arnautovic immediately struggles to score, and we've talked all season long about our lack of depth up front and how much Thuram means to us. Thuram is the type of player who just keeps scoring goals in big games. He has scored against Juventus. He has scored against Roma. Like he scores against all the big, of course, the beautiful goal against Milan. He has scored against all the top teams in the league when we play them. He's been so important to us. So to lose him for any period of time is something I'm concerned about. And obviously I was impressed today that we were able to get away with, beating Lecce without him. But moving forward, I don't know how long he's going to be out. Hopefully he can return in time for the second game against Atletico, because frankly, I don't think we can win in Madrid without him being at least available for a substitute appearance.
Yeah, I think he will be back against Bologna already. So that's like a bit ahead of Atletico. So he should be fine for the second leg. That's I think that's the latest. So maybe he can play half an hour against Bologna and then start against Atletico. So we should be fine for the second leg there. But I want to ask you guys about the Atletico match and the first half. How did you see what happened there in general?
I thought the first half was kind of a little bit of a stalemate, honestly. I thought that outside of the chance that Lautaro had that came through some good play from Thuram, that was really the only really big chance that comes to mind right now that I thought we should have really capitalized on. There were some other good moments. That DeVry had one where he kind of broke through for a split second, but he couldn't make the final pass. I thought that Mkhitaryan had a really poor first half in that game. I know you mentioned earlier some of the defensive work that he does, and I agree with that 100%. He is actually really underrated in terms of his defensive work. I think he's right up there in the high percentiles for interceptions and helping to win the ball back. I think that's actually kind of more what we'll miss from him when he eventually, leaves the lineup as opposed to his offensive contributions, because the guy just can't shoot anymore for some reason. Something's going on there. But yeah, I thought that he missed some really easy passes, and I think if you want to go back a little further, I think he probably should have been rested against Salernitana. But obviously Inzaghi made his decisions. But yeah, I thought that overall it was a fine first half from us. It wasn't really until the second half that we really kind of turned it on, and you really started to see the real difference between us and Atletico. And really quick, just to touch on Andrew's point in regards to Thuram. I thought that he was probably our best player in that first half, and we are going to miss him against the big teams for sure. The Atalanta game, the Bologna game, I really hope we have him against Atletico, because it just changes the entire way that we're able to play. Realistically, he is our only counter-attacking threat. He is our fast player, at least from our starting lineup. I think now we have TJ on the bench, Tejan, who's I think pretty quick, and Dumfries can get up to a decent speed when he's in full gallop. I wouldn't consider him a burner, but at least he has something there. But realistically, Thuram is the only one who, when he changes gears, can really, I think, frighten an opponent. So he's going to be a huge miss when we're playing deep in a low block, especially. I think we rely on him to threaten the opposition, and hopefully he'll be back for that Atletico match, as Andrew mentioned, because I think it's a completely different game. We have to approach it in a completely different way if we don't have Thuram.
So we'll spend more time recapping or previewing the next game against Atletico in future pods. The only thing I really wanted to get thoughts on before we wrapped up the Atletico discussion was the penalty no call, which I know some people were upset about. Miko, and talking to you offline, you are not upset about this. So there was a ball whipped into the box that went off. Was it Savic on Atletico? It went off his left arm. His arm was Molina. Thank you. Was probably in what you would say is a natural position. Obviously, the referee and VAR felt that way. I didn't think this was a penalty. It wasn't a goal-scoring chance that he interrupted. It wasn't like the arm was super extended from the body. And I tend to be more sympathetic than most when it comes to these defender arm in the box situations. Like when a defender, this wasn't happening in this situation, but like when a defender jumps and they naturally raise their arms and they're being called for penalties on that when it's clearly inadvertent, that stuff has always kind of ruffled my feathers. So here we have a player whose arms are pretty clearly to his sides, ball hits off it. I really didn't think there was a penalty in there, but do any of you disagree with that? Were any of you clamoring for a penalty call?
I like the no call there. I agree with you. Now, with that being said, I have seen those called before, and certainly in Serie, it would not surprise me if that resulted in a VAR check, but I think you have to let defenders defend sometimes. I mean, he has his arms down by his side. It takes a weird deflection. It hits him in the arm. again, it didn't really impact the play for me. I'd be upset if it was given against us. So I'm not upset that it wasn't given for us. I think it was a good no call.
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of torn. I'm not as clear on it. I mean, I think his arm was by his side, but it was also slightly removed from his body. Like I think it was probably a penalty, but I didn't have a problem with them not calling it as long as like they take that consistent approach. Like, which I know it's asking for a lot. Different refs and different VARs will react differently to it, but it was kind of like where I was like, yeah, it's probably a penalty, but I was okay with them not calling it. I would like kind of take that position because I don't know. When I first saw it and I looked at the replay, like he was like staring at the ball for quite a little bit of time. It wasn't like, his head was turned or he didn't see the ball at all. And it very clearly struck his arm. So again, it probably 50-50. I would have been fine if they would have called it, obviously, because it's us. But ultimately, I was glad that it was a no call because I feel like you guys mentioned, it's pretty harsh a lot of times when they call those. So it was fine. One quick thing on Atletico before we move on, though. We mentioned this a little bit, but I thought Dumfries played pretty well in that match when he came on. And that was refreshing to see because he's been kind of iced out for a while. And then there's been some discussion about him possibly, re-signing with us. So, he's been making an impact. And I feel like that was a good sign to see. And I was very worried about De Vrij playing, and I thought De Vrij did pretty well. Atletico is just such an irritating team to play against. Like that midfield just pisses me off so much because they're just like all over it, and DePaul is just like such a pest, and they're so scrappy. So it's like they just make the game so ugly, and that's not how we play. So I'm glad we got that result, but like yeah, they're a very frustrating team to play against.
Dumfries did look good, and I think especially when we don't have Thuram, Dumfries is almost non-negotiable. Because if you don't have Dumfries or Thuram, essentially you have no pace to threaten on the counter at all. So I would like to see ideally both of them start the second leg, especially because I think we're going to have some chances to potentially hit them on the counter. But yeah, overall, Dumfries has looked pretty solid the last few matches, and I thought that he looked all right today against Lecce as well. And it sounds like he may even be willing to extend his contract now, which is interesting in terms of squad building and what's going to happen there. But I'm sure there'll be some time to discuss that later. But no, Dumfries has looked pretty good recently.
Okay, let's pivot to Atlanta then. So Atalanta are playing right now as we speak against Milan. They're down 1-0. They haven't lost in a while. I think they've won 5 or 6 on the bounce. So this would be their first time dropping points quite a bit of time. They've been running out this 3-4-2-1 or 3-4-1-2 formation, having a lot of success with it, with De Ketelaere a bit of a revelation. There was a fun press conference this week where Pioli was basically saying, of course, I saw the talent, and no, he's not a useless player because it took him more than 6 months to adjust to life in Italy, like it's natural for a young player. So he's really the danger man right now for Atalanta. He's been their best player. I think there's a chance Scamacca starts this game, which I'm very excited about. He's resting right now, and given the short turnaround, I think you'll probably see him start or at least play against us. But yeah, Atalanta's been in white hot form. Of course, this is the makeup match that was postponed because of the Supercoppa Italiana. And I think you can reason that if we take 3 points from Atalanta here, it might be time to call the Scudetto race, because this is one of the harder remaining fixtures left on the calendar. I know it's a home match, but still, there aren't too many big teams left to play. And given Atalanta's position in the table, they're fighting for a Champions League spot. They're fighting to finish even second or third. This is one of the last big matches left. So if you can take 3 points here on a short week with what should be your full capacity starting lineup, you're sitting pretty as we look ahead rest of the season. As I just mentioned, we should be playing all the starters here. Everyone's rested. Pavard should be back. Bastoni should be back. Hakan should be back. So we should be able to go full throttle. I don't know Summer's status. He has that flu. You would think if it's just a flu, he might be able to recover in time, but I know everyone will sleep better if he's back in the lineup instead of Aldero. Irfan, how do you feel about this game against a pretty hot Atalanta team?
Yeah, Atlanta's always one of those teams that's kind of annoying in the sense that like they always play really well. But we've had some good success against them. I was just looking at our record recently. In our last 5 matches against them, we've won 4 and just drawn once, which includes a Coppa Italia match. So I think we'll be in good shape. I'm glad that we're at home. Last time, they gave us some trouble. I know you remember vividly, Andrew, that Scamacca scored against us in the last fixture. And so, there'll be a tough match. It'll be cagey. Obviously, if we had our full starting lineup, I would feel really good about it. Thuram being gone, I think, is going to make it a much tougher match than it probably should have been had we, been in a situation where we are now, where we were able to rest a lot of the starters in the match today. So I think it'll be tough, but, I expect us to be able to pull out a win. Atlanta is good, but I don't think that they're that great. And given our form against them recently, we should be in good shape. I think it's going to be interesting, though, for us. I'm curious to see how we handle them in defense, because I think they'll give up chances to us, and it's just a matter of us taking our chances. And that's why if we had Thuram, I'd probably feel a lot better than if we were starting Arnautovic or Sanchez. But to me, it's going to be interesting to see how well our defense holds up against them. De Vrij so far has been really good, but I'm curious to see, because they can put us under some pressure with the kind of attacking play that they have. So that to me will be kind of the biggest factor in what happens in that match. But I'm hoping and expecting a win, but I think it'll be pretty tough.
Yeah, I think it'll be a tough match, but as Andrew said, I think if we can get through this match, it really kind of puts a nail, at least one nail in the coffin for the Scudetto. Because at a certain point, you got to look up and see how many matches are left, how many points we would have to drop, and then also assume that a Juventus team that all of a sudden is in really shaky form. They did win today in the last minute, fino alla fine, as they say, but that was against Frosinone at home, and that was to stop a 4-game winless streak. And then, Milan, who I still don't think is really a Scudetto threat, and looks like they're about to let up an equalizer here to Atalanta, who just got a penalty. But I think that if we get through Atalanta, all of a sudden it's like, hey, we just need to kind of manage this, as opposed to we still have to go out and necessarily win this. And we can even start to maybe look a little bit at Europe, assuming we get through that second game with the Atletico. And I'm excited for those prospects. I think that this game against Atalanta, I'm actually rooting for them to come back here and hopefully win against Milan. So they need to pick up the points even less against us, because if you look at their schedule, they have a really difficult schedule coming up here with some fixture congestion. I believe their match against Bologna is only going to be 48 hours from their next match in the Europa League, if I'm not mistaken, in the round of 16. So they're going to have to make some decisions here, and they're probably going to have to do some rotation. Maybe they'll even start that against Inter. I don't know. But yeah, it's going to be an interesting match for sure. They have been in really good form. We have struggled against them before in the past, although recently I think we've done much better. So I would hope that we can find a way to get the victory even without Thuram. And if we do, I think, as stated, we're in really good shape.
Yeah, I agree that since we're gonna start with our first team, it's gonna be our game in my mind. We're gonna control it. That's how I feel, because it's at home and we do it so well there. Although Atalanta plays in a way that they pass the ball so well, and they control the areas on the pitch so well that we're gonna need to put some work on. But I think we can manage it if we have Lautaro and Arnautovic probably starting the match. But apart from Arnautovic, it's gonna be first team. Except, is Acerbi ready yet? He's still not ready. Any idea? Because
I'm not sure if he's back yet.
Yeah.
I know the initial thoughts were that he would be back for this match, but I haven't seen any confirmation of that.
Yeah. Okay, because I saw in this Lecce match De Vrij got some hit to his knee, so it's a bit concerning at this point. But hopefully, Acerbi is back soon because I think we need him back. I don't think De Vrij can play like twice a week, 90 minutes. Well, I don't know. Maybe he can, but at least if he's taking these hits once in a while, it's gonna be a struggle. So hopefully,
I think ideally
soon,
you don't want to put any of our players in a situation where they have to play twice a week, 90 minutes on repeat, right? I think you want to have a full squad to choose from, so you can kind of rotate, especially when you have two guys who were in their 30s in that position. And one of them being Acerbi, who's well into his 30s. You would love to be able to rotate the both of them.
Yeah.
Andrew, what do you think? How you feeling about the match against your boy, Scamacca?
It's always a little frightening when there's such an elite striker on the other team where you're going to have to pockets. It's tough, especially with your backup center back having to handle him. But I do expect him to start in all seriousness with Atalanta. Scamacca, with Atalanta needing to rotate here, just given their fixture congestion, as Sterling pointed out. I'm watching. I've had one eye on this. Go ahead, Miko.
So you think that Atalanta will like rotate against Inter because they think it's a lost cause already, so they will put the bench guys in.
I want to go as far as saying a lost cause, but they definitely have a tighter fixture list with the Europa League coming up, and I've kept one eye on this match as they're playing Milan as we record, and it's weird to give Gasperini credit, but you have to, because as much as we hate him as Inter fans, like it's such a fluid philosophy. It's not a quick, like, they don't sucker punch you, right? Like, I think there's this maybe misconception that they're this fast breaking countering team, but they're methodical in their passing. Their build-up play is actually like a little slower than you'd expect, but it's very precise. It's very systematic, and they have the ability to sustain possession against you. So I'm curious to see how Inzaghi approaches this. Like today, you saw him, I assume, instruct the team to sit back and catch Lecce on the counter. So against Atalanta, do we do the same thing? Do we try to sit back more and let them try and break us down, since Atalanta are more than happy to handle possession? Or since we're at home, do we try and show some initiative and take the game to them? Maybe the argument, to Sterling's point, is that you should go for their throat early, knowing you don't have Thuram, knowing you're probably less dangerous on the counter without him. So this is going to be an interesting chess match to me. I'm kind of curious to see where we land tactically, but you have to be confident, right? Just the way we're playing, the way we continue to pick up points. We haven't dropped points in 2024. It is February 25th. Like, that is an insane stat.
Yeah. Well, see, you would think so, right, Andrew? But like, this is, again, I'm going to vent a little bit here, but the PTSD of Inter fans is so real that we just cannot accept that this team is actually probably a top 3 to 5 team in Europe at this point, right? Like, it's okay to go into a match. It's okay to be the favorite. It's okay to think that we're going to win. It's okay to demand that we win. And, if we end up losing or drawing, then to be, rightfully disappointed or dejected. But like, the emotional hedging of Inter fans never ceases to amaze me, because every time anything happens, like, oh, Thuram got injured. Oh, there goes the season. Scudetto's gone. Like, everything, like the hyperventilation, the PTSD is so real. And I get it, right? I mean, having been on this journey and lived through it for so long, I get it. But it's just like, at what point are we just going to accept that this team is excellent, that we are probably a top 3 to 5 team in Europe, and that we go into pretty much every match, with the exception of playing against maybe Manchester City or maybe playing against Real Madrid, we should go into every match as the rightful favorite, and we should be delivering wins whenever we play. Like, I think it's okay to demand that and expect that, and then just deal with the heartbreak if it ends up going the other way.
Well, I think I can answer that question. I think, when we win a major trophy, a lot of that will subside. And I don't care what anyone says. A Coppa Italia, a Supercoppa is not a major trophy. And Inzaghi just hasn't proven that he can get across the finish line for the big one just yet. I think that this is the year. I think we will get the Scudetto done this year. But you have to remember that second half against Milan 2 years ago, That back pass against Bologna 2 years ago. Last year we had a skid at the beginning of the new year. So I think it was like January or February where we essentially went winless. There's some scars, not just with this team, but with this manager. And so I think that once we finally either get a Scudetto or a Champions League, a lot of that PTSD is going to go away. But until this manager proves that he can actually win the big ones, then that's probably not going to go away just yet, because nobody wants to be burned.
I hope you're right. That that's going to be the case. I'm still skeptical because I think the PTSD is so enduring as fans that even if we were to get a Scudetto here going into next year, and again, part of it is like, who knows what Suning's going to do with this team in the offseason. Like, we might have to sell some big names, and then we start next year again, not knowing exactly what this team is. But it's like, we can at least enjoy what is a truly beautiful thing, and that is watching this team play. I am impressed almost every time we play with how well our players are performing and how well Inzaghi has them performing. It's like, and in a way that it's actually fun and beautiful to watch. Like, if you're a neutral fan, if you're not a Serie fan and you're not an Inter fan, you watch us play, and I think you would be impressed. I think you would say that this team is very fun to watch. They have really good players. And I understand Inzaghi didn't deliver, but again, like, context is also important. I mean, we were in the Champions League final last year and we narrowly lost to Man City. Okay, like, we had our chances and we could have very well won that match. And we narrowly lost to them in the Champions League. So yeah, he didn't deliver the ultimate goal, but honestly, like, I think he deserves the benefit of the doubt a lot more. And I'm hoping, like you said, that if we win the Scudetto this year and win it, pretty early on in the process, that fans will start to really recognize how special this team is and how special this season is that we're witnessing from this team.
Let me just be clear. I agree that Inzaghi deserves a ton of credit for what he's done with this team. I watch us play, and I watch all the leagues basically, and I watch your Arsenals, your Man Cities, your Real Madrids, Bayern Munich. I watch all the big clubs, and I'll take our style and watching the way that we play over anybody else right now. We play absolute, beautiful, total football. I mean, I posted a picture on the forum of the buildup in the Arnautovic goal and where our defenders were when we started the buildup. Our three center backs were in the midfield, and we had Barella and Çalhanoğlu essentially where our center backs were. I mean, there's no coach that does that type of stuff, where the players in the middle of a game are comfortable swapping positions to such a high standard, while at the same time never losing defensive solidity. You can talk about the beautiful football that we play, but I think the most impressive thing about this team is how stingy we are. I mean, we have more clean sheets than goals conceded. That's insane. That's not something that's normal. So to be able to play this level of football and play it and be beautiful, be effective, and also be solid, I mean, I haven't seen an Inter like this ever in my life, and that includes the treble team, just to be clear. So I think this year is going to result in a real substantial trophy. I would love it. I think we could win both competitions that we're in. I think that we're one of the favorites for the Champions League. And I would take on just about anybody in Europe right now and feel like we're going to have our chances. So, hopefully this is the year that we can really stamp Inzaghi as being, the guy. But, I've seen enough. I think he's fantastic, and I hope he stays for quite some time.
Have you seen when they've been running, at least UEFA, have been running the clip of the first Arnautovic chance, how we started that from summer, and then we played with a few passes, which ended up DiMarco crossing to Arnautovic, and that's like a statement. From Inzaghi's play, how Inter plays, and that's pretty neat, and nice to see that Inter is getting recognized there on the international level as well.
Andrew, do your best Jay impression and put me in my place. for being
No,
too
I
exuberant.
just want to say, like, Irfan, I kind of like the fact that our fans are such masochists, such malcontents. Like, if you look around at, like, Milan fans, who I love to make fun of, like, every summer they're drawing up fantasy scenarios of they're going to spend 200 million. They're signing Milinkovic Savic. They're signing just
Mbappe's coming.
Mbappe's coming on a Bosman. They're going to go ahead and take Chiesa from Juventus, sign Berardi, put them all together, and like they're going to rightfully win their place in the Champions League. I kind of prefer the more measured, pessimistic Inter fan who is like going to be clutching his pearls, thinking we're going to choke away the Scudetto until there's 1 minute left in the match in which we're going to clinch it. And even then, if we're up 5-0, they'll still be worried. It just, I kind of appreciate the contrast.
And we're also all part-time
like,
accountants too, because and we're also all part-time accountants too, because our club is so broke that we have to pitch every penny, and we all like financial analysts as well.
Yeah, the part-time accountant, part-time GM is hilarious as well. I've often wondered if that's a feature of like other fandoms as well, or if it's like a truly Inter thing that like anytime we sign anybody or we're thinking about re-signing a player, everyone has a comment on like, well, Dumfries isn't worth like a cent over 4 million euros. It's as if like that means anything to anybody, but like everyone has such a strong opinion. And I wonder if it's just a feature of Inter fans or if this is just like the new norm with any team.
I think we know the financial fair play rules better than like a GM of like a Premier League team. Like they don't even have to worry about whether or not they're going to get hit by financial fair play. You know, as Inter fans, we had to think about that every year for a very long time. So we know the rules so well.
Yeah, like I've gone on UEFA's website and downloaded the FFP like handbook for accounting. I promise you, there are people in Real Madrid's organization who have never done that. Like, do you think they're worried about capital gain calculations? Their fans, like, it's, I don't know. There's something of a beauty to us being so abused over the past like 10 to 15 years that now we're like slowly coming out of this rugged relationship.
Yeah.
So let's do. We do have some listener questions I want to hit before we get out of here. So let's just do some quick Atalanta predictions. I'll start with our best predictor and Miko.
Oh damn! Now I'm getting pressure to get this right.
Yeah, exactly. You got to keep the form up.
What did I get for Lecce? Probably a win, but was it even close? I don't remember.
No one predicted a 4-0, but I think you predicted a 2-0.
Yeah. Okay, well, pretty close, but I would go with how close it would be. It's gonna be 2-1, so it's gonna be a close one. No idea about the scorers, but maybe Lautaro will score a goal. And now let's give it to Çalhanoğlu penalty. We've been missing that for a while.
I'm going to go with the 1-1 on this one. I think that we are finally going to drop a couple of points here in this midweek fixture. No reasons for panic, obviously, but I think it's going to be a 1-1 draw.
Irfan, what do you have?
I'm going 2-1 as well. I think it'll be a difficult match. I'm going to go with Lautaro scoring, and I'm going to look for Barella to get on the score sheet as well. And I'll give your boy Scamacca a goal just to keep it going against us. But 2-1 Inter win, cagey match, rough match, but we'll pull out.
I'm thinking a similar line of thought. I'm thinking 4-3 with a Scamacca hat trick.
Well,
all right.
Will that double his goal tally for the entire season? I mean, has that guy scored at all?
It's been a hot minute. I think he has 4 goals for the season, maybe 5. Let's get ahead to the listener questions. So we did get a couple submitted. Guys, if you ever have questions you want to ask us, feel free to. You can respond directly on Spotify. You can email us at inter.jections.pod@gmail.com, or you can even drop them on the forum, however you prefer. But so we have 2 this week. One from Abdi, who asks basically, among the current defender, whom would you pick as the center back if Acerbi and De Vrij are unavailable to play? Sterling, I feel like you're you have intricate knowledge of defenders. So how would you approach this if Acerbi and De Vrij are both out?
If Acerbi and De Vrij are both out, from our current list of defenders, I would probably play Pavard there. if it was a match if it's a must-win match and I'm not thinking about long-term who I want to develop in that position, I'm probably going to play Pavard there because I know that I can at least rely on him. I would slot Darmian in at right center back, and then I would keep Bastoni at left center back there because I at least know what I'm going to get from Pavard. He's not going to be as aerially dominant as a Cherby or De Vrij. He's probably a little bit more flimsy in terms of having to deal with a large center forward there. However, I know that he's going to be in the right position. I know that he's going to pass the ball well out of the back. And I know that he's going to be strong in the tackle. So I would say that he would probably be the choice I would make if it was like a must win tomorrow. Now, if it's long term and I'm thinking about who I'm going to develop into that position, I would probably want to develop Bisek long term as the option there. Given his height, he also does have really good feet. I think that he could potentially long term be a really good solution in that position. He is a little bit green right now. He's going to have to develop. It's going to take probably a season or two to really get him performing at a high level in that position. But I think that he has the physical attributes and the tools to make that position his own and make it make sense long term. So that would probably be the direction that I would go.
Irfan, Miko, any additional thoughts there?
Well, no. I think Sterling, he said exactly what I would have said.
Okay.
Yeah, because Pavard has the most experienced defender we have, apart from Darmian, but he's not really a central defender in a sense. So I would go with Pavard.
I think I agree with all that. I think it depends a little bit on, I guess, what style of team we're playing against, because I do feel like Pavard offers so much, linking up on that right side, that if for some reason we're playing against a team, where we might have some reason that we need to score and, not be as conservative and, we're chasing something, then I might keep Pavard on the right and put Bisek in the middle. But I think it's kind of a toss-up. You kind of go with either Bisek or Pavard, and I could see why you would give the edge to Pavard there. But it sucks, because you lose so much putting him in the center, I think, by not having him on that right side. Because in my opinion, Bastoni and Pavard are like the perfect players for those two positions under Inzaghi's system. So it's a dream to see both of them playing in those spots. That's my take.
All right, I'll move on to our second and final listener question. This is a lengthy one, so bear with me. Why is it that when we have a dangerous free kick right outside the box with two world-class dead ball specialists in DeMarco and Kalinoglu standing over it, so that I feel zero anticipation? Should Hakan be replaced as free kick taker? He hasn't even come close to scoring a free kick at Inter, and if I'm not mistaken, only scored one in his 4 years at Milan. And that comes courtesy of Jay in Sydney.
Jay in Sydney. Of course.
You want to take that, Irfan?
No, go ahead.
Okay, so this is it's a great question, and I really wish I could give a really good answer as to why that is, but for some reason, it does seem like we are just lacking quality from direct free kicks. I can remember one that DeMarco scored against, I believe it was either Genoa or Sampdoria. I know it was at the Marassi in a match that we ended up drawing, but I can't remember him scoring one since then. He has scored some for the Italian youth teams as well. But yeah, it's been so long since Hakan has curled a free kick over a wall and even really worked a goalkeeper. There really isn't a good reason for why we don't seem to have a good dead ball specialist there. Only thing I can think of is this maybe something that is not emphasized in terms of our training methods. We really expect a good all-round game from our players, and I will say that especially Hakan has come on leaps and bounds as just an all-round player. Defensively, he's gotten so much better. He's gotten so much better in his passing in the build-up as well. We really try and score from open play. That is our way of getting goals for the most part. I would say if you really look at us from set pieces, even on corner kicks, we're really not that great. I wouldn't say that we threaten that often, and a lot of times we end up doing kind of these short passing solutions out of corner kicks as well, which oftentimes don't come off. But I think that the way that Inzaghi plays and the way that we train really kind of lends itself towards, let's just score from our natural buildup as opposed to let's be reliant on set pieces. That's the best answer I can give.
Yeah, I mean, I think one thing that's interesting is that, Hakan does have highlights from his Bundesliga days of scoring some spectacular free kicks. But even in the ones that I've seen a lot from him, they're more like, long distance, just like power shots, and sometimes they have some kind of weird movement on them. They're not like the kind of technical curve around sort of free kicks, that you would see from, Messi or somebody like that. I think, his skill set isn't necessarily that kind of a precise free kick type taker. But again, no excuse. I mean, I feel like he could definitely do a lot better on free kicks. And same thing with DeMarco. I mean, I think there's a lot of times where, DeMarco has it in him to get a free kick on goal, and it's just not even close a lot of times. So I definitely miss, Eriksson in that sense, like who could pretty consistently at least get it on target. But then my only other thought is, maybe you give Aslani a chance to knock some of those in and see if he can deliver it. Or, maybe Sanchez might not be bad for that. I mean, I know he tends to sky them as well. But at least, that he has like the technical ability to get it curled up and over a wall and on target. But, even then it's very inconsistent. So I agree. It is kind of head scratching how we can't seem to do it.
What about Barella? Like Barella has our most recent direct free kick goal, I believe, right?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, maybe he should take them. But I think Sterling made a good point that the way we play, maybe we don't train them, because I think we don't even get those free kicks too much, like on the edge of the.
We really don't.
Edge of the box. Yeah. So we are
we
like,
just win penalties.
We are not seeing those kind of chances too often. So they are a bit further from the box, and then it's just a cross, some kind of a cross to the box. But it's typically not like a direct shot chance.
Yeah, I would like us to do more of like, I love, this is like one of my favorite plays just in football in general, is those free kicks where like, you got like a couple of people standing over the ball or one person, and they don't cross it into the box. They don't take a direct kick, but they kind of like lay it off for someone who's in stride, and they just like strike it really hard. Like right. I wouldn't mind something like that. So like you avoid the wall, but you're still getting a very good kind of direct chance on goal. Like I wish we would do that more, because I do think with Barella and with Hakan, and even with Mkhitaryan, especially against like Milan, but maybe not Mkhitaryan always, I think we have the players who can get a nice shot on goal. Honestly, even Pavard, I think if you were to like lay off the ball with him running in stride and him taking a shot, I think you have a good chance that he might be able to get it on goal. Maybe we do some more of that.
Yeah, I saw Bayern do a similar free kick routine to what you're talking about, Irfan, against Lazio in the Champions League last week, and it almost came off, actually. It resulted in a really good chance for Leroy Sané to strike the ball. Something like that would be nice to see. But look, I don't have any stats to back this up, but it just feels like I see a lot less direct free kick goals in the sport overall, just across Europe in general. I don't feel like I see as many direct free kick goals. And again, I haven't looked up the stats on that, but it just, just from my memory in recent years, it just seems to be more and more rare that you see that. And then also, I think Miko made a really good point. We don't tend to build up through the middle of the pitch as much. A lot of our build-up play comes through the wide areas. So where we have the balls on the pitch and where we end up getting fouled, a lot of times it's not really right on top of the box. So we don't really have a lot of chances for direct free kicks either. So, if you don't practice them, you're not going to be great at them. So, that's just another thing I think is kind of interesting. But we'll have to look up the stats and see if there is a lack of direct free kick goals in the sport now as opposed to maybe 10 or 15 years ago.
It seems like it is. I mean, I remember there's like a stat that even Ronaldo hasn't scored from like a free kick goal in like many, many, many years. And I don't think maybe he never did at Juve, or maybe he did once or something like that, but it was tricky. Like, I feel like if I were to think of like the kind of player in Serie A that you're like, all right, this guy can, deliver that kind of curling over the wall or on the side of the wall and still get it on goal, I think of somebody like Dybala, right? Like, he's the kind of player I feel like who has that kind of a skill. But like, other than that, there's just not a lot of players who can do that sort of thing anymore. It just doesn't seem like
the last one was Pjanic, probably.
Yeah, that was a good call.
You're right, Pjanic. Yeah, it's maybe it's a lost art. Maybe it's just not something that's emphasized for the modern player.
Well, thanks again for the listener questions. Like I said, feel free to submit them. We'll get to them whenever we can. Obviously, with the crowded fixture lists, lots of good content regardless. So, Sterling, thanks for stepping in again. Appreciate talking to you as always, and we'll catch you all next week.
Always a pleasure, guys. See you soon.
All right, great. Thanks, everyone.
Yeah, thank you. Bye.